Want to speak real Arabic from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at ArabicPod101.com.
Hi everybody, this is Nora. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll be answering some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, how different is modern standard Arabic from Arabic dialects? And how different are dialects from each other? Greetings are one of the things we learn first when we learn a new language. But how different are greetings, for example, from modern standard Arabic to other Arabic dialects, and from one Arabic dialect to another? Let's see some examples of the difference in some greetings. Hello, how are you? مرحبا, كيف حالك? Hi, ازيك? مرحبا, كيفك? Good. بخير. كويس. منيح. Now let's see an example of a sentence like what's your name in modern standard Arabic and in different dialects. What's your name? ما اسمك? اسمك ايه؟ شو اسمك? Here's another example. How old are you? كم عمرك؟ عندك كام سنة؟ قديش عمرك؟ To change a noun from indefinite to definite, you add an article that is basically like the in English. There's a difference in the pronunciation in different Arabic dialects. Let's see the word the love as an example. الحب, الحب, الحب. Notice the difference between el and il. These are basic examples of differences between modern standard Arabic and two different Arabic dialects. Did you know that on our website, ArabicPod101.com, you can learn modern standard Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, and Moroccan Arabic? Check out our website for more information. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next episode. Salam! Hi everyone, welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll be answering some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, where is Arabic and its varieties spoken? There are many different definitions of the Middle East. Some say from Morocco to Iran, some exclude Iran and Turkey, some exclude Morocco, and some even exclude North Africa. I guess the borders of the Middle East are vague, and not everyone agrees on them. That's why in our lessons we like to use the term Arabic-speaking countries or Arab world instead. That's because we're concerned with Arabic as a language and with its varieties. In this lesson, we will learn together where exactly these variants of Arabic are spoken. Let's start from left to right, from Africa to Asia. First, we have the Maghreb region, which includes Mauritania, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. Again, not everyone agrees on the definition of the Maghreb region, so opinions may vary slightly. Arabic spoken in the Arab Maghreb region is characterized by infusing a lot of French vocabulary and grammar with Arabic and Berber languages. Many other languages are spoken as first languages in this region, like Tamazight varieties and French. Next, we have Egypt and Sudan, where the dialect widely known as Egyptian Arabic is spoken. It's a dialect of Arabic with a lot of ancient Egyptian, Latin, Turkish, French, and English influence. It's a popular dialect in the Arab world due to the popularity of Egyptian music and shows. Other languages are also spoken in this region, like Nubian in northern Sudan and southern Egypt. Arabic variants are also spoken in other African countries like Djibouti, Somalia, Eritrea, Tanzania, Chad, and Comoros. Next, let's move on to Asia. Let's take a look at the Levantine region. This includes Palestine, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Keep in mind that not all Levantine dialects are the same though. The Gaza Strip region, for example, has some Egyptian influence. Lebanese Arabic has lots of French loanwords. Syrian Arabic has many Turkish loanwords, and so on. However, for the most part, they're mutually intelligible. Next, we have the Gulf region dialects, which are spoken in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, and Yemen. The dialects of this region and the Levantine region are considered the closest to modern standard Arabic. There are still quite a few differences though. Dialects vary widely in this region, with lots of sub-dialects depending on the city or the region. I remember listening to a friend from Sana'a talk to his friend on the phone, and I understood absolutely nothing from that 2-minute conversation. Luckily, My friends from Sana'a talk to me in Egyptian Arabic so that we can understand each other. Lastly, we have Iraq, in the far east end of the Arab world. Here, Iraqi Arabic, commonly known as Baghdad Arabic, is spoken. This dialect has Turkish, Persian, Kurdish, and Aramaic influences. The interesting thing about the Arab world is the diaglossia, meaning that people use different languages depending on the situation. As a result of this diaglossia, the news of most of these countries is in Modern Standard Arabic. But if you walk in the streets or make friends in any of these countries, you won't hear anybody speaking Modern Standard Arabic. Instead, they use their own dialects. Pretty interesting, right? If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I will see you in the next episode. Salam! Hi everybody, this is Nora. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is voweling important? And where are the vowels in Arabic? If you look at an unvoweled Modern Standard Arabic text, it'll seem as if it's mostly consonants. Beginner Arabic learners might wonder how it's possible to have so many consonants in a row. The reason behind this is that most vowels in Arabic are transcribed in voweling signs and not as independent letters. For beginner Arabic learners, voweling signs are necessary in order to read Arabic text correctly. That means that you'll sometimes see words that look the same when they're unvoweled but have a different pronunciation. Let's see some examples for that. قل, say in the imperative form. قل, it decreased. أكل, food. أكل, he ate. ذهب, he went. ذهب, gold. You have to consider the voweling signs as an essential part of the main text when you learn new vocabulary. It might seem challenging, but if you think of them as English vowels just on top of or below the consonants instead of in between them, it won't seem as awkward. Native Arabic speakers rarely need voweling though, because they can tell from the context which part of speech a word is, and also because of their years of experience. You can get to that level too by constant practice and regular vocabulary input. You can learn more about voweling by checking our Arabic Alphabet Made Easy series on ArabicPod101.com. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I will see you in the next episode. Salam! Hi guys, my name is Nora from ArabicPod101.com. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I will answer some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, are there feminine and masculine inanimate objects in Arabic? Well, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that unlike French and Spanish, Arabic doesn't have gender-specific articles. Yay! In Arabic, we use the definite article el for both genders, and there is no indefinite article at all. Double yay! There is more good news. You can tell what gender a noun is from its structure. If you see a ha sound, commonly known as ta marbuta, at the end of a word, then it's definitely feminine and will be conjugated as such. For example, the word shajara, meaning tree. Now for the bad news. There are a lot of nouns that don't end in ta marbuta, but they're still feminine nouns. However, there aren't a lot of them, and once you know that they're feminine nouns, you just have to memorize them the way they are. An example of this is Sahara, meaning desert. The final part of the noun, is an indication that the word is most likely a feminine noun. It could also be a masculine noun, like the word ma, meaning water, which is masculine, so this rule only works with certain structures. But there isn't always a helpful indication. For instance, the word shams, meaning sun, is a feminine word. Do you see a ta marbuta? Nope. You have to consciously remember that it's a feminine noun. The last thing you need to know about Arabic feminine and masculine nouns is that they change the conjugation of any verb or adjective that describes them. For instance, we'll look at a noun-adjective-verb sentence for a masculine noun and for a feminine noun. الفتى الطويل يغني. The tall boy is singing. الفتاة الطويلة تغني. The tall girl is singing. The first one is masculine and the second one is feminine. See the slight difference in conjugation? Namely, the ta marbuta in the end of الطويلة and the ta in the beginning of تغني. Although this might seem challenging at first, it will feel like second nature with practice. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next episode. Salam.
Hi everyone! Welcome to the Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. In this series, you'll master Arabic pronunciation. Proper pronunciation is essential in Arabic, and in this series, you'll learn it in a fast, comprehensive, and easy way. In this first lesson, you'll learn about the building blocks of the Arabic pronunciation system that will help you in future lessons. Arabic uses an Abjad writing system where each symbol is codified as a consonant. All 28 letters in the Arabic alphabet are consonants. There are no letters that represent vowels in Arabic. This does not mean that the Arabic language lacks vowels altogether, though, because vowel sounds do exist, but they're just implied. Consider this English example. See if you can guess the sentence. Even without the vowels, it's very likely that you figured out that the correct reading of this sentence is, he went to the park. This is similar to what it's like to read in Arabic. But be careful not to fall into a very common trap. As you're learning to speak correctly, you shouldn't concern yourself with all the letters. That's right, forget them. You care about the sounds of Arabic, and here they are. There are 28 consonant sounds and 6 vowel sounds. Each symbol that you see here represents a single sound determined by the IPA, which is a standardized way to represent sounds without the baggage that's often involved with traditional letters. By using all of these sounds, you can form every single word in Arabic. Still seem complicated? Well, how about this? Of the 28 consonant sounds in Arabic, you already know 19 of the original sounds. That's right. If you're a native English speaker, then you already make these sounds every day. You can also ignore all of the vowel sounds for the same reason. The only thing standing between you and perfect Arabic pronunciation is 9 new consonant sounds. You can handle that. Now let me introduce Parihan, who will be helping you to master these new sounds.
مرحبا أنا بريهان.
Parihan will be giving you native pronunciation examples for you to imitate. But for this first lesson, just sit back and listen to the unique sounds of Arabic.
حتى رد صوت ضوء طول ظل قوي غالي عالي.
In the next lesson, we'll look at the top 5 pronunciation mistakes Arabic learners make. You'll want to make sure not to fall into these common traps. After that, we'll start going through the vowels and consonants of Arabic. This is your chance to learn how to correctly say all of the words you just heard. We'll finish up the series by covering some special topics that will really make your Arabic sound natural. To wrap up this lesson, here's a question for you. Why is it important to spend time on learning proper pronunciation, even if you're already an advanced speaker? The answer, you will be understood, and this will help you build more confidence as you communicate in Arabic. As beginners, you're creating a strong foundation to build on. And for more advanced students, this is your chance to improve your accent and lose any bad habits you may have picked up. What is the hardest part of Arabic pronunciation? Tell us about it in the comments. See you in the next Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide lesson.
Want to speak real Arabic from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at ArabicPod101.com.
Hi everyone! Welcome to the Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. In this lesson, you'll learn about Arabic stress. But what exactly is stress? Stress refers to the prominence or relative emphasis placed on certain syllables in a word. When you say the word unbelievable, for example, do you notice how the li is accentuated? That's because it's pronounced longer and louder than any other syllable in the word, and this is what we refer to as stress. Stress is essential for proper pronunciation and communication because it affects the meaning of a word or sentence. Consider some examples in English. If you were to say desert when you mean dessert, or project when you mean project, or how about present when you actually meant present, do you see how confusing it could be? Stress is just as important in Arabic as it is in English. Unlike English, however, there are much clearer stress rules in Arabic. Learning the stress rules in Arabic is very simple. There are only 2 main principles that you have to follow. Principle number 1. Stress the long syllable that is closest to the end of the word. Principle number 2, if there are no long syllables, stress the third syllable from the end. A long syllable is a syllable that contains a long vowel or two consecutive vowels, or if it has a vowel and ends with a consonant. Okay, now let's take a look at the first principle in action in a few Arabic words. Repeat them after Perihan.
كتاب كتاب سلام سلام حدود حدود مراكز مراكز مفاتيح مفاتيح مسؤولين مسؤولين.
See how the long syllable that is closest to the end of each word was stressed? That's the first principle in action. Okay, now let's take a look at the second principle. If there are no long syllables, stress the third to last syllable. Repeat after Perihan.
كتب كتب مدرسة مدرسة منزل منزل استنبط استنبط اقترب اقترب.
The third to last syllable for words that are 3 syllables or less is also the first syllable. But notice how the stress never goes past the third to last syllable in words that have 4 or more syllables. Now you know the secret to speaking Arabic with the correct stress. See you in the next Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide lesson. Hi everyone, welcome to the Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. In this lesson, you'll learn about emphasis spreading in Arabic. Emphasis spreading is the term used to describe the effect that emphatic or dark letters have on letters adjacent to them. In the presence of a dark letter, the letters around them will sound deeper than normal. Consider the following.
زاهر ظاهر.
Did you notice how the long A is pronounced differently in each example? Listen to it again.
زاهر ظاهر.
The long A in the second example sounds deeper than the first. This is due to the presence of the dark letter impacting on the adjacent vowel. Let's take a look at another example.
دائم ضابط.
The first example is pronounced as expected. In the second example, however, the long A is once again pronounced deeply. The preceding letters were affected too. Just as the dark letter had affected the long A, it can just as easily affect any long vowel or consonant. Emphasis spreading is typically a natural process. However, learners tend to be more resistant to the natural flow of language because they are afraid of breaking rules. This often causes their speech to be more rigid and unnatural. If you want to be fluent in Arabic, you need to relax and give in to the nature of dark letters and emphatic spreading. Let's continue. This time, repeat after Perihan.
مكتب مطلب.
Your turn. One more time.
مكتب مطلب مزدهر مظلم مزدهر مظلم.
Emphatic spreading can also cause consonants that have a dark counterpart to be pronounced as the dark variety.
تطعيم تطعيم.
Notice how this word is spelled with a regular T and with a dark T. But listen to the pronunciation.
تطعيم تطعيم.
It's as though both of the T's were dark. It's actually easier to pronounce both of them dark as opposed to pronouncing one soft and one dark. This is especially the case in rapid everyday speech.
متطور متطور.
The same thing applies here.
متطور متطور.
Okay, last one.
استصلاح استصلاح.
The first S is pronounced dark despite what is written.
استصلاح استصلاح.
In this lesson, you learned about emphasis spreading in Arabic. In the next lesson, we'll review everything that we've learned in this series and test you on it all. Can you think of any words that are pronounced differently to how they're spelled in your language? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. Hi everyone! Welcome to the Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. You've made it to the last lesson. Do you feel more confident about speaking in Arabic now? In this last lesson, we'll wrap things up by quizzing you on the material that we've covered in this series. Make sure to practice out loud with this lesson. You know all the parts and pieces, but can you speak Arabic with a natural accent? If you've been quiet up until now, be sure to speak out loud with Perihan. Are you ready? Let's go. You probably knew this phrase before you started the series, but did you know how to pronounce it correctly? Give it a shot.
السلام عليكم.
Did you pronounce this greeting correctly? Be mindful about the throaty sound in this common greeting. Try again.
عليكم.
If you still haven't got it, go back to lesson 7 to review the material. What about this next one?
صباح الخير.
Did you pronounce these emphatic consonants correctly? Remember, to produce a dark consonant, build up pressure at the point of contact and constrict your throat. Listen to it again.
صباح الخير.
We covered the emphatic S sound in lesson 6. Okay, let's move on. Which syllable should you stress in this example?
استقبل.
Do you recall the second principle? If there are no long syllables, stress the third to last syllable. Try one more time.
استقبل.
We covered stress in lesson 8. Here's the last one.
مستطيل.
The emphatic spreading of the dark letter causes the letters adjacent to it to sound deeper than normal. This is why the first consonant is pronounced dark instead of what is written. We talked about this in the previous lesson. Try it one last time.
مستطيل.
How did it go? Do you feel like you have a better accent than you did at the beginning of this series? What parts of Arabic pronunciation are still difficult for you? Bye! Hi everyone! Welcome to the Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide. In this lesson, you'll learn the top 5 Arabic pronunciation mistakes to avoid. These are common mistakes that students of Arabic tend to make. So pay close attention and make sure that you don't make these same mistakes too. Are you ready? Then let's get started. Number 1. Can't pronounce rolled R's. The Arabic R is a challenging sound for most learners of Arabic. Don't be discouraged though, as it is a naturally difficult sound. Many Arab children have difficulty pronouncing this sound. With enough practice, however, you'll be able to overcome it. The only way to solve this problem is to keep listening to native Arabic speakers and practicing it yourself, or practicing with us. Listen to the following examples.
ورد. رد.
We'll teach you how to perfect this complex sound in lesson 6. Number 2. Mispronouncing the L sound. The Arabic L sound is peculiar because it sounds somewhat like an English L, but not exactly. The problem arises when speakers begin substituting the English L for this sound, and when you do, native speakers will notice immediately that Arabic is not your native language. Listen to Perihan and pay attention to the way it's pronounced in the following words.
لون. أهلا.
Unlike the English L, the tongue is ever so slightly flatter and straighter in Arabic. Don't worry if you don't get it right away because we'll break down this sound in lesson 5.
ع. أ.
Many learners tend to confuse these two sounds because both are throaty sounds that are uncommon in Western languages. The first sound sounds like a deep and turbulent sound that rumbles far in the throat. You'll have to retract the back part of your tongue into your mouth to cause constriction in your throat. This sound is arguably the trickiest sound in Arabic, but don't give up. You'll master it with practice. The second sound is actually deeper in the throat than the first. So deep, in fact, that it causes the vocal cords to stop momentarily, causing a buildup of pressure. It's the sound you make in between the and o in uh-oh. Listen to both of these sounds in a few examples.
عسل. فأر. عائلة.
We'll teach you all you need to know about these two sounds in lesson 7. There are many dialects in Arabic, so much so that it often feels like each dialect is like a language in its own. This can be daunting for new learners because there are just so many options that it's hard to decide which dialect to learn. This letter, for example, is pronounced like the J in jam in Standard Arabic, and in most dialects except for the Egyptian dialect. The Egyptian dialect, however, is one of the most widely understood dialects of Arabic because of the wide popularity of Egyptian media and movies. In Egyptian Arabic, this letter is pronounced like a regular English G, as in game. Let's listen to the difference one more time. In Standard,
جديد.
and in Egyptian.
جديد.
Of course, both pronunciations are correct. The key thing is to be consistent with your pronunciation. There are two tricky aspects about this letter. The first is that it's a unique sound that does not exist in many languages. Let's listen to how it's pronounced in the word time in Standard Arabic.
وقت وقت.
The second aspect is that this letter is pronounced differently in different dialects. The previous pronunciation occurs in Standard Arabic and in the Arab countries of Northwest Africa, like Morocco, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia. In Egyptian and Levantine dialects, this letter is a glottal stop, like the stopping sound in uh-oh. Compare the pronunciation of this letter first in Standard Arabic and then in Egyptian dialect.
وقت 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 وقت.
Now you know the top 5 Arabic pronunciation mistakes to avoid. Try to be careful so that you don't make the same mistakes. See you in the next Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide lesson. Hi, welcome to Introduction to Arabic. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Yafa.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of Arabic grammar. Word order refers to the order in which words are structured to form a sentence in a given language. Consider the English sentence, I ate an apple. But first, let's remove the article an here for simplicity. So we're just left with I ate apple. The basic word order for English is subject, verb, object, or SVO for short. If we break down the English sentence, I ate apple, we can see that the subject I is presented first, followed by the verb ate, and then finally, the object apple is positioned last. This is the basic word order for sentences in English.
Now, let's compare that same sentence, I ate an apple in Arabic. أكلت أنا تفاحة. If we break down the Arabic sentence, we get the verb أكلت, which means ate, followed by the subject أنا, meaning I. And finally, we have the object تفاحة, meaning apple. Arabic is actually written in red from right to left. We will cover this aspect more in the next episode on writing. The word order for Arabic then is verb, subject, object, or VSO for short.
The same sentence in Arabic then is essentially ate I apple. Verb first, then subject and object last.
Okay, let's move on to the next section.
English is what is called a subject-prominent language. This simply means that the subject is slightly more important than other components in the sentence. It's the key piece of information other components in the sentence relate to. Who is doing the action is slightly more important than what is being done or which object it's been done to in English.
Arabic, on the other hand, is defined as a null subject language. That essentially means that the subject isn't valued as much in Arabic as it is in English. In fact, Arabic speakers would likely omit the subject from a sentence altogether wherever they can.
Such as when the subject was about you, the speaker, or if the subject has already been established and you're just continuing the conversation.
Let's take a look at this phenomenon on null subject in a bit more detail.
More often than not, if you wanted to say, I ate an apple in Arabic, you would not say,
أكلت أنا تفاحة.
Instead, you would more likely say, ate apple in Arabic,
أكلت تفاحة.
where you omit the subject I. Most Arabic sentences are constructed and spoken like this in real life.
أكلت تفاحة.
In most situations, such as a one-on-one conversation, it's clear that the person who's speaking is the subject. In cases where it's obvious who or what the subject is, it's almost guaranteed that the subject will be omitted, and so you're left with
أكلت تفاحة.
On the other hand, when it's unclear who or what the subject is, or if you wanted to place emphasis on the subject, like if you wanted to declare from a group of people that it was you who ate the apple, then you would include the subject.
أكلت أنا تفاحة.
But more often than not, most sentences spoken in daily Arabic conversation can be spoken without including the subject at all, particularly if that subject is you.
فتحت الصندوق. عدت إلى المنزل بالقطار.
Knowing this, we can easily express any simple action in Arabic using just the object and the verb. Try to create the sentence, I ate a hot dog, from this set of words.
أكلت hot dog.
Okay, got it? So we know the verb order of Arabic is VSO. The verb goes first, so let's put ate here. Next would come the subject, but as we learned earlier, we can afford to ignore the subject since the speaker is the same person taking action. Finally, we can add the object hot dog at the end there. And that's it.
أكلت hot dog.
You just learned how to say, I ate a hot dog in Arabic. Well done!
أكلت hot dog.
You can create any basic sentence like this in Arabic if you simply know the word for the verb and the object in Arabic. Let's wrap up this lesson by recapping what you've learned. In this lesson, you learned that Arabic sentences are formed using a verb, subject, object, or VSO word order. Most sentences spoken in Arabic will not actually contain a subject, especially if that subject is obvious, like when it's you, yourself, the speaker. And lastly, you can create basic sentences in Arabic by putting the verb first and the object last. See you in the next lesson. Bye!
Bye.
Want to speak real Arabic from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at ArabicPod101.com.
Hi guys, this is Nora from ArabicPod101.com. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll be answering some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the possible forms of a verb in Arabic? Modern Standard Arabic has different conjugations for gender, number, and tense, resulting in very long conjugation tables. Starting with the conjugations you use the most, perfecting them, and then moving to another set of conjugation is a good way to go about memorizing these long tables. Let's take a look at how different a verb can look like depending on its conjugation in Arabic. We're only going to show you one verb so that we'll be able to see the differences very clearly. We chose the verb to go because it is a simple verb that's also commonly used when people start learning a new language. Let's see what verbs look like for different subjects in the present form. أذهب, I go. تذهب, you go. يذهب, he goes. تذهب, she goes. نذهب, we go. يذهبون, they go. يذهبان, they go, dual masculine. تذهبان, they go for dual feminine. يذهبن, they go for feminine. Let's take a look at how it looks like in a sentence. العاملون يذهبون إلى العمل. The workers go to work. Now let's take a look at the past tense conjugation. ذهبت, I went. ذهبت, you went. ذهبتِ, you went for feminine. ذهب, he went. ذهبت, she went. ذهبوا, they went. ذهبا, they went for dual masculine. ذهبتا, they went for dual feminine. ذهبن, they went for feminine. Let's see what this looks like in a sentence. أنا ومارك ذهبنا إلى النادي. Mark and I went to the sports club. Next we have the imperative tense conjugation. اذهب, go. اذهبي, go for feminine. اذهبا, go for dual. اذهبوا, go for plural. اذهبن, go for feminine plural. Finally, let's see what the imperative looks like in a sentence. اذهبي إلى المحاضرة. Go to class, directed to a female. Conjugation is perhaps the trickiest thing for Arabic learners, but it's one of those things that will feel easier the more you practice. Also, don't forget that these conjugation tables are for modern standard Arabic, but conjugation tables for most spoken Arabic dialects are much shorter and easier. So that's it for our lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next episode. Salam. Hi everyone, this is Nora from ArabicPod101.com, and welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I will answer some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, how come Arabic has many forms for the same letter? There are 28 letters in the Arabic alphabet, but many learners wonder why letters look different in different parts of the word. It can make the alphabet seem like so much more than 28 letters. That's due to the cursive nature of Arabic text. Arabic is written from right to left in a cursive style. اللغة العربية. So Arabic letters occur in 4 different forms: initial, medial, final, and isolated. Let's see examples of some letters in their 4 different forms. The letter Jim. Initial, Jamil, beautiful. Medial, مجلة, magazine. Final, ثلج, snow. Isolated, سراج, lamp. Next we have the letter Ain. Initial, علم, science. Medial, معلم, teacher. Final, منع, forbidding. Isolated, ممنوع, forbidden. Next we have the letter Sin. Initial, سمك, fish. Medial, مسح, wiping. Final, همس, he whispered. Isolated, حماس, enthusiasm. Some letters don't change much from one form to the other. Only the connection part is different. Let's check out some examples. The letter تاء. Initial, تفاح, apple. Medial, متاح, available. Final, بيت, house. Isolated, صوت, a sound. Next we have the letter دال. Initial, دب, bear. Medial, قدر, fate. Final, عيد, feast. Isolated, ورد, flowers. Did you notice the word Hamas in the examples? The Palestinian organization Hamas actually means enthusiasm in Arabic. I hope you like our lesson. Please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next episode. Salam. Hi guys, this is Nora from ArabicPod101.com. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll be answering some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, how come Arabic doesn't have verb to be? If I were to introduce myself in Arabic, I would say, Ismi Noura. Ismi Noura. If we translate this literally, it would be something like, name my Nora. Have you noticed that the verb to be isn't in the sentence? In this lesson, we will see how the Arabic sentence structure allows sentences to form without needing the verb to be. We'll see what a noun plus adjective sentence looks like in Arabic. Let's see how to say your nationality in Arabic first. أنا أمريكي. I am American. أنا فرنسي. I am French. أنا مكسيكي. I am Mexican. أنا تركي. I am Turkish. أنا أسباني. I am Spanish. أنا كندي. I am Canadian. For a female, you would add an إيه sound to the end of the nationality. So, أمريكي would become أمريكية, and so on. Now let's see some other commonly used sentences that contain the verb to be in English but not in Arabic. السماء صافية. The sky is clear. الجو بارد. The weather is cold. البيت كبير. The house is big. أنا جائع. I am hungry. الطريق طويل. The road is long. الأكل لذيذ. The food is delicious. You must be wondering, what about the past tense? The auxiliary verb كان and its variations are the closest thing to the past tense verb to be in English. For example, كان الأكل لذيذا. The food was good. Note how the past tense verb to be كان in Arabic comes in the beginning of the sentence, unlike in English. You can learn more about this subject by checking out Lesson 8 of our intermediate series on ArabicPod101.com. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I will see you in the next episode. Salam.
أهلا بكم أنا كارول. Welcome to ArabicPod101.com's Abjadia Made Easy, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Arabic alphabet, the Abjadia. In the last lesson, we introduced two letters of the first group that look alike, Ra and Zain. If you've been practicing, I'm sure you're doing a great job. This lesson will be a great chance for you to review all the letters we learned so far. Let's practice together. First, we'll review the basic rules. In this series, we've classified the Arabic alphabet into two groups. The first one is the group of the letters with counterparts in English language. The second one is the group of the letters that don't have counterparts in English. That means they will be a bit more challenging to pronounce, but remember, practice makes perfect. Letters of the Arabic alphabet have 4 ways to connect to the letters before and after them: isolated, initial, medial, and final. However, there are letters that don't follow that rule and only have 2 forms of connection. They are alif, dal, dhal, ra, zain, waw. Now let's review the letters we've learned so far. In the first lesson, we learned alif and noon. They are the letters you need to form the word ana, meaning the pronoun I. First, we have alif. Here's the isolated form. And here's the final form. Alif only has 2 forms, as we've already explained before. Now let's review noon. Isolated, initial, medial, and final. That's it for the first lesson. Did you remember that the initial form of alif is the same as the isolated form, and the medial form is the same as the final form? Now let's move on to the next lesson. In the second lesson, we learned ba, ta, and tha. First, we have ba. Isolated, initial, medial, final. Then there's ta. Isolated, initial, medial, final. Finally, we have tha. Isolated, initial, medial, final. That's it for lesson 2. Their shapes look like a boat, remember? Next, let's review lesson 3. In the third lesson, we learned 3 more letters that look alike: jim, ha, and kha. Here's jim. Isolated, initial, medial, final. Now let's check ha. Isolated, initial, medial, final. Finally, we have kha. Isolated, initial, medial, final. That's it for lesson 3. Next, let's review lesson 4. In the fourth lesson, we learned dal and dal. First, we have the dal, isolated and initial, medial and final. Now let's check the dal, isolated and initial, medial and final. That's it for lesson 4. These letters are 2 of the 6 which only have 2 forms. Finally, let's review lesson 5. In the 5th lesson, we learned ra and zain. These 2 letters also have only 2 forms. First, we have ra, isolated initial, medial final. Then there's zain, isolated initial, medial final. And that's the end of our review for the first 5 lessons. Did you remember most of them? Keep practicing and you'll get better in no time. Now we'll continue with some Arabic writing rules. To be able to read Arabic correctly, you also need to master the voweling system of the Arabic language. Voweling signs are marks above or beneath the letter that adds a vowel sound to that letter. However, vowels in the voweling signs are pronounced shorter than the actual vowels. Let's see the 3 basic voweling signs when used with ba. First, here's the fatha. The pronunciation will now be ba. Next, this is a kasra. This is now pronounced as bi. And finally, here's a dhamma. It changes the pronunciation to bu. Now, let's practice writing and pronouncing these basic voweling signs. Akh, brother. Akh, ukht, sister. Ukht, jad, grandfather. جد. أنا I. أنا. أنت you. أنت. Voweling is very important because it can change a word's meaning. For example, here are 2 words that have the same letters but are pronounced differently and have different meanings because of the difference in voweling. Har means hot, while hur means free. There are other voweling signs in Arabic, but they aren't as common as the 3 basic signs we learned in this lesson. We'll go back to them in the next review lesson. Now it's time for Carol's tips. The concept of voweling might feel a bit unnatural to non-native speakers. However, Arabic learners need voweling to be able to read correctly, especially when faced with new words. Native speakers don't need voweling because they know the words and how they're pronounced already. Make sure you master the 3 signs we learned in this lesson. They will help you read faster and more correctly. Good luck! That's it for this lesson. I hope this has helped you memorize the letters we've learned so far and get a feel of how the voweling system in Arabic works. You did a great job. In the next Abjadia Made Easy lesson, we'll learn 2 more letters of the first group that look alike. See you then. Salam!
Hi everybody, this is Nora from ArabicPod101.com. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I will answer some of your most common Arabic questions. In the previous lesson, we talked about English sounds that don't exist in Arabic. So in this lesson, we're going to answer the question, how many Arabic sounds don't exist in English? When people listen to Arabic, they may fall under the illusion that Arabic has so many sounds that don't exist in English, and that it's going to be extremely difficult to speak it. But like I said, it's only an illusion. In fact, out of the 28 sounds that exist in modern standard Arabic, only 10 sounds don't exist in English. Moreover, a lot of these sounds aren't even used in spoken dialects and are reduced to sounds closer to their English counterparts. Let's take a look at the letters that are like an exaggerated version of sounds that already exist in English. Dod, which sounds like an exaggerated D sound like the D in double, like the word daman, daman, meaning warranty. Sad, which sounds like an exaggerated S sound like the S in salt, like the word sabr, meaning patience. Next we have ta, which sounds like an exaggerated T sound like the T in tom, like the word matar, meaning rain. Dha, which sounds like an exaggerated the sound like the sound in brother, like the word dhalam, meaning darkness. Ha, which sounds like an exaggerated H sound like the H sound in how, like the word hulm, meaning dream. A, commonly known as hamza, which is basically a glottal stop like the sound in uh-oh, like the word ana, meaning I. As you can see, these 5 are more familiar to you than you think. Now let's take a look at the 4 sounds that might not be as familiar. With these, you might need some listening and speaking practice to get used to them. Qaf, like the word qala, meaning he said. Kha, like the word khal, meaning vinegar. Ain, like the word Amman, which means Amman, the capital of Jordan. Ghain, like the word ghasala, meaning he washed. Take a look at our Ultimate Arabic Pronunciation Guide series for more information. These sounds don't exist in English, but some of them exist in other languages, perhaps in your language. So tell us in the comment section. Also, if you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I will see you in the next episode. Salam! Hi guys, this is Nora from ArabicPod101.com. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I will be answering some of your most common Arabic questions. The question for this lesson is, how does Arabic adapt to sounds that don't exist in Arabic? And how are loanwords pronounced in Arabic? One way to sound like a native speaker is to know and avoid sounds that native speakers of the language cannot produce. It tells you how to properly pronounce many of the English loanwords that exist in Arabic. As we said before, it's hard to generalize all native Arabic speakers because there are so many dialects and they vary widely. In this lesson, we will be talking about Egyptian, Levantine, and Gulf dialects in general. Of course, many Arabic speakers are bilingual and can speak English and other languages fluently. But in this lesson, we will speak about the sounds that these speakers sometimes struggle with. As you have seen from the previous lessons, the Arabic alphabet is missing many sounds that exist in English. The letter L, for instance, is pronounced differently from English. Listen closely to how it sounds in Arabic and in American English. Lam versus L. For example, the word classic in Arabic is klasiki. Now, if you say klasiki with a non-Arabic L, it will sound very weird to a native Arabic speaker. So in order to sound native, you have to adjust the L sound to the Arabic lam sound. Let's take a look at another sound, the P sound. This one is pretty tricky for native Arabic speakers to pronounce. They usually end up pronouncing it as a B sound. For example, if you want to order a soda in Egypt, you would usually use the word Bepsi, which is the common Egyptian word for soda. If you say Pepsi, I guess people will understand you, but they're gonna give you the look, you know? Another sound we have is the R sound. The R sound in Arabic is commonly referred to as the rolled R. Observe the difference in pronunciation of the word reb. This word has the same meaning in Egyptian Arabic as it does in English, namely rap music. Notice how the R sound in Arabic sounds like r, as opposed to the English R. Next, we're gonna address the sound the, as in the words this or that. Although this sound exists in modern Standard Arabic and in some dialects, it does not exist in Egyptian Arabic and many other dialects as well. This makes it tricky for some Arabic speakers to pronounce it, so they tend to change it into a Z or a D sound depending on the word. For example, the modern Standard Arabic word dhaki, meaning smart, becomes zaki in Egyptian Arabic. The same case applies for the th sound in three. This one usually changes into an S sound. The phrase thug life became very important on social media, but in Egypt, many people say sag life instead, for instance. So expect the book to sound like zabuk and three to sound like sri. Speaking of how languages influence one another, did you know that Maltese, the national language of Malta, is highly influenced by Arabic? Not only does it have tons of loanwords from Arabic, but also a lot of its grammar is very similar to Arabic. Pretty interesting, right? I hope you like our lesson, and if you have any more questions, please leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next episode. Salam.